The sun hung high in the sky, casting golden rays over the quiet streets of Maplewood, a small town where everyone knew each other, or so it seemed. 10-year-old Maya was having one of those perfect afternoons that kids dream about. She had just finished her homework and decided to step outside with her 6-year-old brother, Ethan. They were laughing as they kicked around an old soccer ball, their giggles echoing through the neighborhood. Ethan's foot sent the ball soaring toward Mrs. Peterson's yard next door. It landed near her rose bushes, dangerously close to knocking over a ceramic gnome she treasured. "Maya, can you get it?" Ethan pleaded, his big brown eyes wide with worry. He hated when their mom scolded him for losing things. Maya sighed but smiled. She loved being the brave big sister who could fix anything. She hopped over the low fence separating their yards, careful not to step on any flowers. Just as she bent down to grab the ball, a shadow loomed over her. Startled, she turned around to see Officer Mark Harris standing there, his tall frame blocking the sunlight. His uniform felt out of place in this peaceful setting, like a storm cloud rolling into a clear blue sky. "What are you doing here?" he barked, his voice sharp enough to make Maya freeze. Her heart began to race. I was just getting my brother's ball," she stammered, holding up the soccer ball as if it were proof of innocence. But Officer Harris didn't soften. Instead, his eyes narrowed suspiciously. "This is private property," he said coldly. "You shouldn't be here." Maya tried to explain, her voice trembling. "It's okay. Mrs. Peterson knows us. We live right next door." But the officer wasn't listening. To him, Maya wasn't just a child retrieving a lost toy. She was something else entirely. A problem. A threat. Someone who didn't belong. Before she could say another word, Officer Harris reached for his handcuffs. The metallic click echoed in Maya's ears as he snapped them tightly around her tiny wrists. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision. "Please, sir, I didn't do anything wrong," she cried, panic rising in her chest. Ethan watched from the other side of the fence, his face pale with fear. "Let her go," he shouted, clutching the fence with both hands. Neighbors started to gather, drawn by the commotion. Some gasped in disbelief, while others pulled out their phones to record what was happening. No one could believe their eyes. A 10-year-old girl, handcuffed. For what? For trying to retrieve a soccer ball. The absurdity of the situation was almost too much to comprehend. Yet there she stood, tears streaming down her cheeks, looking smaller than ever against the towering figure of the officer. As the crowd grew, murmurs of anger rippled through the air. "This isn't right," one woman whispered, shaking her head. Another man stepped forward, his arms crossed firmly. "Officer, why are you doing this? She's just a kid." But Officer Harris ignored them all, his jaw set stubbornly. In that moment, the warmth of the summer afternoon disappeared, replaced by a chill that seeped into everyone's bones. The news of what happened to Maya spread faster than wildfire. By evening, the entire town was buzzing with outrage and disbelief. Neighbors who had witnessed the scene couldn't stop talking about it. How a grown man in uniform could treat a child like that. Parents hugged their own kids a little tighter that night, imagining how they would feel if it were their son or daughter standing there in handcuffs. Videos of the incident began popping up online, shared by the neighbors who had recorded it on their phones. In grainy but undeniable footage, you could see Maya's tiny frame dwarfed by Officer Harris, her cries echoing as she begged him to let her go. The clips went viral almost instantly, drawing attention from people far beyond Maplewood. Comments poured in from strangers across the country, many expressing shock and anger. "How can this happen in 2023? One person wrote, "This is heartbreaking." Another added, "Back in town, emotions ran high." At the local grocery store, at church, even at the park where families usually gathered for weekend picnics, conversations revolved around Maya and what had happened. Some people were furious, while others felt helpless, unsure of what to do next. But one thing was clear: no one could ignore it anymore. For years, whispers about unfair treatment by certain officers had circulated quietly, dismissed as exaggerations or isolated incidents. Now, those whispers turned into shouts. Maya's parents, Lisa and James, found themselves at the center of the storm. They had always tried to shield their children from the harsh realities of the world, teaching them to trust authority figures because they're here to help. But now, that trust felt shattered. Sitting at their kitchen table late that night, they held each other tightly, tears streaming down Lisa's face. "She's just a baby," she whispered, her voice breaking. "What kind of message does this send to our kids?" The next morning, the family woke up to find reporters camped outside their house. Microphones and cameras pointed at them as they stepped onto their porch, unprepared for the sudden spotlight. Lisa spoke first, her voice steady despite the exhaustion etched on her face. "We're not asking for anything extraordinary," she said. "Just fairness. Justice. Our daughter deserves better than this." Her words struck a chord, resonating deeply with everyone watching. Meanwhile, local leaders scrambled to respond. The mayor called an emergency meeting with the police department, demanding answers. Protest signs started appearing in yards all over town. "Protect our kids. Enough is enough. And justice for Maya." Even teachers joined in, wearing black ribbons pinned to their shirts in solidarity during school hours. One teacher, Mrs. Alvarez, organized a letter-writing campaign, encouraging students to write letters of support to Maya and her family. Hundreds of colorful notes poured in, filling boxes in the corner of the classroom. As the days passed, the protests grew larger. People of all ages marched through the streets, holding hands and chanting slogans. Some brought their own children along, wanting them to witness the power of standing up for what's right. Maya herself stayed home, still too shaken to join, but she peeked out her bedroom window at the sea of people below. Despite everything, a small spark of hope flickered inside her. Maybe, just maybe, something good could come out of this nightmare after all. But as the community rallied together, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Not everyone agreed on how to move forward, or even whether there was a problem to begin with, and in the shadows, cracks within the police department began to widen, hinting at deeper issues. The tension in Maplewood reached a boiling point when Officer Mark Harris finally stepped forward to address the growing storm. The police department, under mounting pressure from the public and the media, held a press conference at the town hall. Reporters packed the room, their cameras flashing like strobe lights as Harris took his place behind the podium. His expression was stoic, almost defiant, as if he were ready to face down the entire town. "I understand there are concerns about my actions," he began, his voice steady but devoid of emotion. "But let me make one thing clear. I did what I thought was necessary based on the information available to me at the time." He went on to explain that earlier that day, a call had come in reporting a suspicious individual near Mrs. Peterson's property. According to him, Maya fit the description of the person mentioned in the report, a young black girl wearing a red shirt. The explanation drew immediate backlash. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and reporters fired questions at him, their voices overlapping in frustration. "A 10-year-old fits the description," one shouted. "Did you even ask her name before handcuffing her?" another demanded. But Harris didn't flinch. Instead, he doubled down, insisting that his job required him to act quickly and decisively. "I can't take chances when it comes to safety," he said firmly. "People expect us to protect them, not second-guess ourselves." His words only fueled the fire. To many, his justification sounded hollow, even absurd. Parents shook their heads in disbelief, wondering how anyone could mistake a child playing with her brother for a threat. Even some of his fellow officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats during the conference. Behind closed doors, murmurs of discontent began to surface within the police force. One veteran officer, who had worked alongside Harris for years, confided in a colleague after the event. "Mark's always been difficult," he admitted hesitantly. "But this is something else entirely." Outside the town hall, The community reacted with a mix of anger and sadness. Protesters gathered once again, holding signs that read, "Children aren't criminals," and "Stop making excuses." A local pastor, Reverend Thompson, stood on the steps of the building, addressing the crowd with a calm but fiery tone. "We don't need excuses, we need accountability," he declared, "and we won't stop until we get it." Meanwhile, Maya's family watched the press conference from home, their faces grim. Lisa clenched her fists as she listened to Harris speak, her jaw tightening with every word. "He doesn't see her as a person," she muttered bitterly. James put a comforting arm around her, but his own eyes burned with fury. For them, it wasn't just about the handcuffs anymore. It was about the dismissive way Harris refused to acknowledge the humanity of their daughter. As the days passed, the divide in the town grew wider. Supporters of the police argued that Harris was simply following protocol, while others accused him of using his badge as a shield for poor judgment. Social media became a battleground, with debates raging late into the night. Yet amidst all the noise, one truth remained undeniable. Harris's actions, and his refusal to apologize, had ignited a movement that showed no signs of slowing down. For Maya, however, the hardest part was yet to come. Despite the outpouring of love and support from her community, she couldn't shake the memory of those cold metal cuffs around her wrists. Every time she saw a police car drive by, her stomach churned. Her parents noticed the change in her, the way she avoided going outside, how she flinched at loud noises. They knew they had to fight not just for justice, but for her healing too. And so, as the controversy surrounding Officer Harris continued to unfold, the people of Maplewood prepared themselves for the long road ahead, a road paved with protests, petitions, and promises of change. The movement in Maplewood grew stronger with each passing day, fueled by a mix of anger, hope, and determination. What started as whispers among neighbors turned into a powerful force that swept through the town like a tidal wave. People from all walks of life joined together: teachers, doctors, shopkeepers, even teenagers who skipped their weekend hangouts to march alongside families. The protests became more than just rallies. They were acts of unity, moments where an entire community stood shoulder to shoulder for a shared cause. One Friday evening, hundreds gathered at the town square, holding candles and singing songs of peace. Maya's mother, Lisa, spoke to the crowd, her voice trembling but filled with conviction. "This isn't just about my daughter," she said, clutching a photo of Maya smiling on her 10th birthday. "It's about every child who deserves to feel safe in their own skin. It's about teaching our kids that fairness matters, and that we won't stop until we see real change." Her words brought tears to many eyes, and the applause that followed seemed to echo endlessly. But it wasn't just emotional speeches that kept the momentum going. A group of local teachers launched an initiative called Kids for Justice, encouraging students to create art, write essays, or record videos sharing their thoughts on equality and respect. One 5th-grade class made headlines when they sent handmade cards to Maya, each decorated with rainbows and messages like, "You're brave," and "We believe in you." When Maya saw them spread out on the dining table, her lips curved into a small smile for the first time in days. Support also poured in from outside the town. Activists from nearby cities arrived to lend their voices, organizing workshops on civil rights and how to document incidents of injustice safely. Celebrities took notice too, posting about Maya's story on social media and urging their followers to pay attention. Overnight, donations flooded into a GoFundMe page set up by a family friend to cover legal fees and raise awareness. Within a week, the campaign had raised tens of thousands of dollars, far exceeding its original goal. Behind the scenes, Maya's parents worked tirelessly to ensure their daughter's voice was heard without overwhelming her. They sat down with civil rights attorneys, poring over documents and strategies late into the night. One lawyer, Miss Carter, promised to represent the family pro bono, moved by the courage she saw in both Maya and her parents. "This is bigger than one case," Miss Carter told them during their first meeting. "It's about setting a precedent, a message that no one, especially children, should ever be treated this way. As the movement gained steam, so did the pressure on local officials. The mayor announced plans to review police policies, while the school board pledged to introduce lessons on diversity and empathy into the curriculum. Even businesses got involved, with local cafes offering discounts to customers wearing Justice for Kids pins. Everywhere you looked, reminders of the growing resistance were present, in storefront windows, on car bumpers, and even painted on sidewalks. Yet not everyone supported the movement. Some residents grumbled about the disruptions caused by protests, claiming the town was being unfair to Officer Harris. "He's just doing his job," one man argued at a diner, slamming his coffee mug onto the counter. Others accused the activists of exaggerating the issue, insisting that Maya's case was an isolated incident. These opposing views created tension, leading to heated arguments in grocery store aisles and online comment sections. Despite the backlash, the majority of the town remained steadfast. For many, this wasn't just about punishing one officer. It was about confronting uncomfortable truths and pushing for lasting reform. As the weeks went on, the protests evolved into something deeper, a celebration of resilience and hope. At one gathering, a choir performed a soulful rendition of "Lean on Me," bringing the crowd to tears. Strangers hugged, promising to continue fighting together no matter what came next. For Maya, seeing the support around her began to ease some of the weight she carried. Though she still flinched at the sight of uniforms, she found comfort in knowing she wasn't alone. Her parents reminded her daily that she had done nothing wrong, that standing up for herself was an act of bravery. Slowly but surely, Maya started to believe them. And as the movement surged forward, driven by love and determination, the people of Maplewood proved that even in the face of injustice, unity could light the way toward change. The movement in Maplewood had reached a fever pitch, but tensions were beginning to show cracks. One Saturday afternoon, as protesters gathered in the town square for yet another demonstration, a group of counter-protesters arrived unexpectedly. They carried signs that read "Support our police" and "Enough lies," their voices loud and defiant. At first, the two groups stood on opposite sides of the street, glaring at each other across the divide. But soon, the air grew thick with hostility. A man from the counter-protest shouted, "You're tearing this town apart." His words cut through the chants of the crowd like a knife. Someone shouted back, "No, we're trying to fix it." Voices escalated, tempers flared, and before long, the peaceful protest turned into a shouting match. Maya's father, James, tried to calm things down, stepping between the groups with his hands raised. "We're here for justice, not fights," he pleaded, but his voice was drowned out by the chaos. Things spiraled further when a young protester threw a water bottle in frustration, narrowly missing one of the counter-protesters. That small act ignited a chain reaction. Shoving broke out, and within minutes, police officers, none of whom were Officer Harris, rushed in to separate the groups. Several people were arrested, including a teenager who had been peacefully marching just moments earlier. The scene left many shaken, questioning whether the movement was losing its way. That night, someone vandalized the police station. Red spray paint covered the walls, spelling out "Accountability Now" in bold letters. While no one claimed responsibility, rumors swirled about who might have done it. Some believed it was an outsider looking to stir trouble. Others thought it could be someone pushed to their breaking point. Either way, the incident deepened the divide in the town. Critics seized on it as proof that the protests were turning violent, while supporters argued that anger was inevitable when people felt unheard. Amidst the turmoil, Maya's mother, Lisa, called for an emergency meeting with community leaders. She knew they couldn't let the movement lose focus, not now when so much was at stake. Sitting around a table at the local church, she looked at the faces of pastors, teachers, and activists who had stood by her family since day one. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "We can't let them win by making us fight each other," she said. "This isn't about revenge or hatred. It's about protecting our kids." Inspired by Lisa's plea, Reverend Thompson stepped up to deliver a powerful message at the next protest. Standing on a makeshift stage, he held up his Bible and addressed the sea of faces before him. "Anger is natural," he began, his deep voice ringing out over the crowd. "But violence, that only gives them more reasons to ignore us. We must rise above it. Let's show them what true strength looks like." His words struck a chord, silencing the murmurs of frustration and replacing them with nods of agreement. Later that week, Maya herself became a symbol of resilience during a candlelight vigil organized by the community. She stood alongside her parents, clutching a small teddy bear gifted to her by a neighbor. Though nervous, she managed to speak a few sentences into the microphone. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said softly, her voice barely audible at first. Then, gathering courage, she added, "And I want everyone to know that kids like me deserve to feel safe, not scared." The crowd erupted in applause, tears streaming down many faces. As the vigil ended, people lingered, hugging strangers and promising to keep fighting together. For the first time in days, there was a sense of calm, a reminder that the heart of the movement wasn't anger or division, but hope and love. Still, challenges loomed ahead. The vandalism had given critics ammunition, and the arrests had sown seeds of doubt among some supporters. But Lisa's determination never wavered. As she tucked Maya into bed that night, she whispered, "We'll get through this, together." Outside, the painted words on the police station glowed faintly under the moonlight, a stark reminder of the work still needed. But inside homes across Maplewood, conversations continued late into the night. People talked about forgiveness, patience, and finding ways to heal wounds without causing new ones. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, many realized that real change required not just passion but perseverance. And in Maplewood, perseverance was something they had plenty of. As the investigation into Officer Mark Harris deepened, shocking truths began to surface. Truths that no one in Maplewood was prepared for. A team of independent investigators, brought in by the mayor after public demand, started digging into Harris's past. What they uncovered painted a disturbing picture. Years of complaints filed against him for racial profiling and excessive force, all of which had been quietly dismissed or buried by higher-ups within the police department. The first bombshell came when an anonymous tip led investigators to internal records detailing multiple incidents involving Harris. In one case, he had stopped a young black man driving home from work late at night, claiming the car matched the description of a vehicle involved in a robbery. The man, who had been unarmed and cooperative, alleged that Harris had used derogatory language during the encounter. Another report revealed that Harris had once tackled a teenage boy to the ground during a routine questioning over a stolen bike, a situation that escalated unnecessarily and left the boy with bruises. These findings leaked to the press, sparking outrage across the town. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. How could this happen? One woman exclaimed at a coffee shop, shaking her head as she read the news on her phone. "He's been hurting people for years, and no one did anything about it." Conversations like this buzzed everywhere, in grocery stores, classrooms, even church pews. Trust in the police department plummeted, leaving many feeling betrayed. Meanwhile, Maya's family received a visit from Ms. Carter, their attorney, who shared the latest developments. Sitting in their living room, Lisa and James listened intently as she explained how these revelations could strengthen their case. "This isn't just about Maya anymore," Ms. Carter said firmly. "It's about exposing a pattern of behavior that has gone unchecked for far too long." She assured them that the evidence would be presented during an upcoming city council hearing, where Maya was expected to testify. The thought of speaking publicly terrified Maya, but she knew it was important. Her parents spent hours preparing her, practicing questions and answers until she felt more confident. They reminded her that she wasn't alone, that the entire town stood behind her. Still, the weight of what she was about to do pressed heavily on her small shoulders. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Friends, neighbors, reporters, and even strangers filled every seat, eager to hear the truth. When Maya took the stand, dressed in a simple blue dress, the room fell silent. Her voice trembled at first as she recounted the events of that fateful afternoon. The handcuffs, the tears, the fear. But as she continued, her words grew stronger. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said, looking directly at the panel of officials. "I just wanted to get my brother's ball." Her bravery moved everyone in the room. Some wiped away tears, while others nodded in solidarity. Even the sternest-faced council members seemed affected, scribbling notes furiously. When Maya finished speaking, the crowd erupted in applause, breaking the formal silence of the courtroom. Outside, supporters cheered as news of her testimony spread. But the story didn't end there. During cross-examination, Harris's lawyer tried to discredit Maya's account, suggesting she might have misunderstood the situation. However, the mountain of evidence against Harris, including the newly uncovered records, made his defense look increasingly weak. By the end of the hearing, it was clear that the tide had turned decisively against him. That evening, as Maya sat with her family watching the sunset, she felt a flicker of hope. For so long, she had carried the burden of that day alone, but now she realized she wasn't fighting by herself. The truth was finally coming to light, and with it came the possibility of real change, not just for her, but for everyone who had ever felt powerless in the face of injustice. The days following the city council hearing felt like a turning point for Maplewood, as the weight of the evidence against Officer Mark Harris became impossible to ignore. The police chief, under immense pressure from both the public and local officials, announced that Harris had been suspended without pay pending further investigation. It was a small victory, but one that sent ripples through the town. For many, it signaled the beginning of accountability, a concept they had long hoped for, but rarely seen. However, justice wasn't served overnight. The case quickly escalated beyond the town's borders, drawing attention from state authorities, who demanded a deeper review of policing practices in Maplewood. Facing mounting scrutiny, the police department released a statement promising sweeping reforms: mandatory bias training for all officers, increased community oversight, and stricter protocols for handling situations involving children. While these measures brought some relief, not everyone was satisfied. Maya's family, along with their attorney Ms. Carter, pushed harder. They argued that suspending Harris wasn't enough. He needed to face criminal charges for his actions. "This isn't just about policy changes," Lisa said during an interview on a local news channel. "It's about holding people accountable when they abuse their power. Our daughter deserves to see that justice is real." Her words struck a chord with viewers across the country, sparking petitions urging prosecutors to take action. Finally, after weeks of deliberation, the district attorney announced that criminal charges would indeed be filed against Harris. He was charged with child endangerment and misconduct in office, crimes that carried significant penalties if convicted. The news spread like wildfire, igniting celebrations in the streets of Maplewood. Strangers hugged each other, cars honked their horns, and fireworks lit up the night sky. For the first time in months, there was a sense of closure, not complete, but enough to let people breathe again. But even as the town celebrated, questions lingered. Some worried that charging Harris was merely a symbolic gesture and wouldn't lead to meaningful change within the system. Others pointed out that while Harris was guilty of wrongdoing, he was also a product of a flawed institution. "We can't just focus on one bad apple," Reverend Thompson reminded the congregation during Sunday service. "We need to fix the whole tree." Determined to ensure lasting reform, Maya's family took matters into their own hands. With the remaining funds from the GoFundMe campaign, they established the Maplewood Youth Empowerment Foundation. Its mission was simple yet powerful: to educate young people about their rights, provide resources for families affected by injustice, and advocate for systemic change. Local schools partnered with the foundation to host workshops, and volunteers poured in to help organize events. For Maya, life slowly began to return to normal, or at least a version of it. She still flinched at the sight of police cars, but she found solace in her art. Her parents encouraged her to express her feelings through painting, and soon her colorful creations became symbols of resilience. One piece, titled Freedom, depicted a bird breaking free from chains and flying toward the sun. It was displayed prominently at a community art exhibit, where hundreds came to view it. Despite the progress, challenges remained. Not everyone in Maplewood supported the reforms. Some residents accused the movement of going too far, claiming it painted all officers with the same brush. Tensions occasionally flared, especially during heated debates at town hall meetings. But overall, the divide seemed less sharp than before. More people were willing to listen, to learn, and to work toward healing. As autumn arrived, painting the trees with shades of gold and red, the town gathered for a unity festival organized by the new foundation. There were food stalls, live music, and speeches from community leaders. Maya stood on stage with her parents, waving shyly at the cheering crowd. "I'm proud of you," James whispered to her as they walked off stage together. Though scars remained, Maplewood had begun to heal, not perfectly, but with hope. The fight for justice wasn't over, but for now, the town could take pride in how far it had come. And for Maya, that made all the difference. Months had passed since the events that shook Maplewood to its core, and while life in the town would never be exactly the same, there was a quiet sense of renewal in the air. The scars left by Officer Harris's actions still lingered on Maya, on her family, and on the community, but they no longer felt insurmountable. Slowly but surely, healing had begun. For Maya, art became her sanctuary. Her paintings, once filled with dark colors and jagged lines, now burst with warmth and light. She spent hours in her room creating pieces inspired by the kindness she'd witnessed during the movement. One painting, titled Together, showed hands of all shapes, sizes, and shades reaching out to one another. It caught the attention of a local gallery owner, who offered to display it in an upcoming exhibition. When Maya saw her work hanging proudly on the wall, surrounded by admirers, she felt a spark of confidence she hadn't known before. "You're amazing," her little brother Ethan whispered as they stood side by side at the opening night. Maya smiled shyly, feeling like maybe, for the first time in a long time, she could believe him. The Maplewood Youth Empowerment Foundation continued to grow, becoming a beacon of hope for families across the region. Workshops taught kids how to interact safely with law enforcement, while support groups provided a safe space for parents to share their experiences. Maya's mom, Lisa, found new purpose in leading these efforts, often speaking at schools and conferences about the importance of protecting children's dignity. "Every child deserves to feel seen and valued," she told audiences, her voice steady and full of conviction. James, meanwhile, volunteered his weekends mentoring teenagers, teaching them skills like woodworking and encouraging them to dream big despite the challenges they faced. In the police department, changes were underway. New leadership brought fresh perspectives, and officers participated in intensive training programs focused on empathy and de-escalation. Some residents remained skeptical, unsure if real change was possible, but others noticed small yet meaningful shifts. Officers started attending neighborhood meetings not just to enforce rules, but to listen, to truly hear what people needed. Slowly, trust began to rebuild, brick by brick. The Unity Festival, held annually now, became a cherished tradition in Maplewood. Each year, the event grew larger, drawing visitors from neighboring towns eager to celebrate diversity and resilience. Kids ran through sprinklers, laughter echoing through the park, while elders shared stories under shady trees. On the main stage, performers sang songs of hope and unity, their voices lifting spirits higher than ever. Maya always attended, wearing a bright yellow dress that matched her newfound optimism. This year, she even helped organize a mural painting activity, where families worked together to create a vibrant masterpiece symbolizing strength and connection. Despite the progress, Officer Harris's shadow still loomed over the town. His trial dragged on for months, filled with tense moments and emotional testimonies. In the end, he was found guilty of child endangerment and sentenced to probation along with mandatory counseling. While some felt the punishment wasn't harsh enough, others saw it as a step toward accountability, a reminder that even those in power must answer for their actions. For Maya's family, the verdict brought a measure of peace. "It's not perfect," Lisa admitted one evening, sitting on the porch with James, "but it's something." As the seasons changed, so did Maya. She grew taller, braver, and more outspoken. At school, she joined the student council, advocating for fairness and inclusion among her peers. Her classmates looked up to her, inspired by her courage and determination. Even Mrs. Peterson, whose yard had sparked the whole ordeal, became a close family friend, often baking cookies for Maya and calling her a true hero. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled around her feet, Maya walked hand in hand with Ethan to the park. They laughed as they chased each other through piles of fallen leaves, their joy infectious. Watching them from afar, Lisa and James exchanged a glance, silently acknowledging how far they'd come. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but for now, they allowed themselves to feel grateful. For love, for resilience, and for the unshakable belief that even in the darkest times, light could break through. And so, Maplewood moved forward, not forgetting its past, but learning from it. The town wasn't perfect, but it was trying. And sometimes, trying was enough.